Welcome to So Much Fun. Today I would like to continue showing you some seam techniques that you're going to find in your patterns. And usually these techniques are listed under the glossary section of your pattern. And only the ones that are needed to make the garment will be given in the glossary. So not every pattern will have every technique given. So I have a couple of samples here of patterns, and both of them refer to understitching. And I know many of my students who are new to sewing, when they come across that understitching term, they just look to me like, I have no idea. What does understitching mean? Well, understitching is something we do to help to keep the facing underneath so it won't be visible. And you want to do it after you have attached or sewn your facing. It'll either be like to the neckline or to the armhole. It can be the waistband. So the facing needs to stay underneath the garment. You don't want to see it. So I have a small little sample here that we're going to do our understitching. I'll read you the description of what understitching is. Open out facing or underside of garment. Stitch to seam allowance close to seam. Now that probably doesn't make a lot of sense to you, so I think it's better if we demonstrate how you actually do it. So let's go to the sewing machine and do some understitching. Here's our sample garment, and I've already sewn the facing on. I've already clipped the curves, and what I need to do is to keep this facing edge to the underneath side. And I like to start at the shoulder seam when I do this. Also notice I have a different foot on my machine. This is, I refer to as the edge foot. And with the edge foot, we will be moving our needle. So hopefully you'll have a sewing machine that allows you to reposition your needle. It'll make it a lot easier and you'll be more accurate if you can do that. But you can still do it if you have to adjust the fabric in order to make your understitching. So I'm going to slide just the facing, and I've got it pressed so that the seam allowance is pressed toward the facing. So I like to do it from the right side of the fabric, not the wrong side, and I position the edge of the foot right in the seam. I want it right in there. Now I'm going to lower the foot, and then my needle is in the center, and this is where we want to reposition that needle. So on this machine, I'm just going to use the arrow to move it to the right. All right, I've got it over as far as it'll go, and I don't change my stitch length. I used a 3-stitch length. Always use a 3-stitch length to construct a garment, and I'm going to use a 3-stitch length for understitching. So I'm going to put my needle down at this point, hold my thread. You always should hold your thread for that first stitch. And I'm going to focus on where the edge of that foot is to make sure that edge stays in line with the seam itself. So I'm going to do a couple of stitches. I'm not going to reverse. I want to stop because this is a rather small circle here. So I'm going to have to adjust my fabric every few inches. And I like to also take my hands and hold each edge, holding what would be the garment and the facing. And I kind of put a little bit of tension on there, just a little, and keep the edge of the foot right in that seam. And this is really going to help to keep that facing underneath so that nobody will see it. Even if you press and if you don't do that understitching, there's a greater likelihood that that seam will work up and be visible. But with the understitching, it really will help to keep it underneath. So I'm only going to do half of this and then we can compare. But notice I am putting a little bit of tension, only doing a few inches at a time because we've got a pretty sharp curve here. And we're almost to the other seam and we'll stop there. We're not going to reverse. I'm just going to let that be, and I'm going to cut my thread. And you'll see you have a row of stitches very, very close to your seam. It's only maybe 1/8 of an inch from the edge. So that when you're wearing your garment, you should not see the facing. That's the whole idea of understitching. So this is the side that has the understitching, and this is the side that doesn't have the understitching. Well, the next time you are using a pattern and it tells you to understitch, you're going to know what to do. I have plans to do more videos on different sewing techniques, so it wouldn't be a bad idea to check back in with me in the next few weeks. Thank you for coming to my channel, and please subscribe and even like it if you don't mind. See you next time. So much fun.